So recently I posted a Dark Souls boss tier list to my Discord, and everyone was saying how many hot takes there were. So I figured it would be a good idea to make a video about my tier list. The rankings might actually change, especially the Dark Souls 3 ones and whatever, because it's been a few weeks since I did that. But anyway, I wanted to make this video because I think it would be funny, and I also want to justify my decisions. So let's get into this, I guess. Now, the Asylum Demon is definitely, it's probably the best tutorial boss of the trilogy. Oh, also, this is only the trilogy because I haven't played Demon Souls or Bloodborne or Sekiro recently enough to really have any good opinions right now. And Elden Ring is its own beast that I may or may not conquer eventually. Anyway, the Asylum Demon is probably the best tutorial fight in the series, or in the trilogy, because it teaches you that you should, if you can't conquer something, that you should try to go and get stronger. That theme comes up several times throughout the rest of the game, especially for several of the bosses that feel more like tutorials than proper bosses, and we'll get into that later. Actually, it's the next two. But the fight itself isn't that great. Coming back to it and falling into the Stray Demon arena, I feel like is more on the Stray Demon than the Asylum Demon. But it's a good tutorial, even if it's not a great fight itself. So I'm just going to put it in A. The Bell Gargoyles are a great tutorial that you should upgrade your weapons, right? Because you die to the boss and you think, oh wow, that was really hard, there's no way I'm going to be able to beat them yet. And then you go explore, you find Andre. So same reason about with the Asylum Demon. I think Bell Gargoyles are a great tutorial, and are a significantly better boss than the Asylum Demon. So that doesn't feel right though. I don't know. I guess in terms of Dark Souls 1, Bell Gargoyles would absolutely not be S tier. But in terms of the entire trilogy, I don't know, that feels better, actually. Now, Capra Demon is also, this is going to sound so absurd. Capra Demon is one of my favorite bosses in the series, for sure. First of all, because it's a wonderful tutorial with poise, or if you don't want to use poise, like using a shield, even. Like there are so many ways that you can conquer the Capra Demon fight, which makes it one of my favorite. On top of the fact that you don't even have to fight him; it's an optional boss. I love the Capra Demon fight, even if going in, +0 broadsword, completely naked, right? I still think it's a fun fight. I've done that on purpose several times, and I've had so much fun doing it. So like, I really like the Capra Demon, but I do think it is a little bit worse than the Asylum Demon, just because when you first see it, it can be one of the most frustrating bosses in the game, but even then that adds such a crazy amount of suspense and, in my opinion, fun, even though it can be frustrating at times, to the game, and had so much more atmosphere to the boss fight. Okay, Ceaseless Discharge. This one is going to be a lot more in line with what most people think. Yeah, okay. Because the fight itself is awful. Only because it's really boring. He does the slam, you dodge, and then you attack a couple times. And the hitboxes are god awful. If you run away and he does the like fire spew attack over and over, it's so frustrating. But you can nullify all of that by just making him jump off the cliff, so it's not that bad. Centipede Demon is optional. I think D, just because the hitboxes are really bad, and you have to wait for it to come up onto the platform. But it can be fun, right? Because you can cut off the arm to get the orange charred ring, and then die intentionally, and then come back and attack it in the lava. You can go off to the side islands where it'll approach you much quicker than if you just stay at the fog gate, which I never do. But like the stomping hitbox is awful. The fire hitboxes are pretty bad, especially for Dark Souls 1. So I think C makes sense. I'd put it above Ceaseless. I have more fun fighting it normally than Ceaseless. But Ceaseless also doesn't have very much health, so even fighting it normally isn't that bad. I don't know. C feels right. Now, Quelaag. I think Quelaag is fun. It really teaches you that you should be up in bosses' faces, and you shouldn't, constantly try to get behind it or whatever. Like, it teaches you to be aggressive and up in the boss's face. But it also teaches you that, or it can teach you, I don't know if it's necessarily intended to be a tutorial, but it taught me that positioning is extremely important. Like, you can stand under her, or right in front of her spider face, right? And the stab attack will just completely miss you. A lot of her other attacks are completely position based, so like her, where she raises her legs up and slams them down, or when she spews fire out of her abdomen, I think Quelaag is a pretty good fight. She has a lot of health for where she's at in the game, especially. So it can drag on. But it also kind of teaches you to explore and get stronger, just like the Bell Gargoyles, but to a greater degree. So, I don't know. I think Quelaag is a good fight. Priscilla as a fight isn't great, but it's a really cool gimmick. It's a cool gimmick. It's really easy. It's completely skippable, so lore-wise, I think it's cool. I'm going to put it in B. And for basically the same reason, I'm going to put Gwendolyn in B. Cool gimmick, even though he's really easy. And it's just like unique and kind of fun. Sif. Probably top of A. Better than Priscilla, but in my opinion, worse than Capra. Not quite as fun. I don't know. This feels wrong. I think... just because I have double S, I don't know. These don't feel like S tier, so... They do. Yeah, that feels better. Okay. Sif, you know, the lore behind her is great. The fact that you can have the alternate cutscene if you go into the DLC is really, really cool. And the fight itself is really fun. The only thing that I really don't like about the Sif fight is the fact that her jumping away can hurt you. But other than that, like, the sword swings are really fun to dodge. She's weak to bleed, which can make it really easy to go fight her really early with, like, you know, the Morning Star or the Bandit's Knife, which can make her, or which you would have to do to fight the Four Kings early, which is a really cool thing that you can do. And she's just kind of placed perfectly for that. And her moveset is basically perfect for that as well, once again, except for jumping away hurting you, which isn't even that much damage. And you need to play much better if you're going into that fight really early anyway. Plus, you know, the multiple ways to get to her, from the Crest of Artorias to killing the Hydra and climbing up the ladder. I think Sif is a pretty good fight. Seath is probably the worst boss in Dark Souls 1, in my opinion. Only because it's extremely easy. The run there is extremely boring. You have to go through the entire prison section for it. Like, I don't know. The Seath fight feels like it starts when you first encounter Seath and doesn't finally end until you actually beat Seath. And it feels so drawn out, let alone the fight being just not fun, and is easily the most forgettable boss in Dark Souls 1. But the same thing with Seath's Discharge, right? It's just easy and boring. But it's not, like, bad. Some of these fights down here are, like, genuinely bad, right? So I don't think Seath is that bad, honestly. I don't know. I'm going to say D. I'm going to say D. D makes sense. Four Kings are really fun. Probably my favorite of the four Lord fights. Probably here, actually, just above Sif. I think the fight... Well, no, because if they spam magic, it's really annoying. Okay, yeah, this feels good. I really like the Four Kings. I think it's really fun learning to beat them without poise tanking was really fun. The fact that you can really easily poise tank them if you don't like the fight itself. Like, Sif is way harder to poise tank than the Four Kings, right? But the Four Kings can very easily be poise tanked, especially when you're right up next to them. Their sweet spot on their weapon won't actually hit you, which makes that strategy a lot more viable and a lot more fun. On top of the fight itself being fun, and then having to beat them quickly before the next one spawns. And even if the next one spawns, you can continue fighting them because the ones that aren't actively attacking you are really passive. I think the Four Kings is a great fight. Now, Bed of Chaos. This is where it gets... like, I know I put Capra Demon up in S tier. Bed of Chaos, this is going to be probably the most controversial thing on here. I think the Bed of Chaos is a really good, very fun fight. And the biggest problem that I hear people say about it is that it's unfair, which it just isn't. Like, the exact same parts of the floor crumble every single time, right? And if you go slow, you're not going to be hit by it. If you're really having problems with, like, figuring out where the floor crumbles and going slow, just get a big shield and all of the problems evaporate. Suddenly, it's literally not an issue. Like, the wooden hands can push you around, right? But again, you just get a shield and that stops. There are multiple ways to break both of the nodes. Like the left one, there's a spot that you can stand that is completely safe that you can just shoot arrows at the second node from, and it makes all of the complaints just go away. There are super, super consistent ways to get into the middle, or even to get to either node, regardless of what phase they're in. It's a super consistent fight. It's a super fun fight and super unique fight, and I really like it. However, because it's so easy and also because it can use Firestorm while you're inside of it and just completely nullify your win, I definitely think it's worse than the Four Kings. The Four Kings, their like tracking magic is really annoying, and the fact that they can spam their like AoE explosion is really annoying. But I don't know, it doesn't happen very often, and even despite that, it's a really fun fight. So that's why I put them in A. Gaping Dragon, way too much health. Baiting out the slam is fun, I think, and it has the same kind of thing as Quelaag, where it teaches you to be up in the enemy's face to actually deal damage to it. You can summon Solaire, who will die instantly. The fact that the channeler has the interaction with the boss, so like the level influences the boss fight more than pretty much any other boss in the game, despite how, you know, small that actual change is. It's really kind of the only boss fight in the game where the level itself is important, aside from maybe Taurus Demon, but even then that changes specifically in the arena itself, right? So that's really cool. However, it has a lot of health, and a lot of the hitboxes feel really weird, like how the very, very tip of the tail can just barely scrape you as at the very end of its attack animation, and you'll still get hit. The puking can be confusing if you don't know what's happening. So, yeah, better than Priscilla, but worse than Bed of Chaos. I like that. Pinwheel is really fun. Pinwheel is a great glass cannon. I just wish you couldn't attack him immediately. Like if he floated down from the top of the arena after the clones had spawned, and you actually needed to be careful of the clones, the fight would be so much better. But if you go in earlier, if you're doing like a soul level 1 playthrough, and you're not at like your peak damage at that point, Pinwheel is a really, really fun fight, I think. And genuinely one of the harder ones in the game. If he had more health, and his clones, well, yeah, if he had more health, he'd be one of the hardest bosses in the game. And depending on when you go to fight him, he can still be one of the hardest, right? And I think he's really fun. He's difficult in a fun way, and in a way that the rest of the game doesn't really test because of the clones, right? Especially since the clones die in one hit, I think it's really interesting. It's a better version of the Crystal Sage, despite the Crystal Sage coming later. But just because it's low health, I'm gonna put it there, I think. Yeah, that feels right. Nito is by far the hardest of the four lords, and is, in my opinion, probably the most difficult boss in the game. Assuming you don't know how to beat it, right? So like Calamite, right, is probably actually the hardest, even when you know what you're doing. Maybe Ornstein and Smo, but Nito can be extremely difficult. Like if you aggro the big skeletons, if you don't know the timing on the ground stab very well or whatever, Nito can be an extremely difficult fight, especially even with the three skeletons chasing you if you don't have like a divine weapon or whatever, right? But Nito's moveset is extremely simple, and the way he's difficult is, you know, with the 3 ads that respawn, which is really annoying. So Nito isn't exactly one of my favorite boss fights in this game. I'd put him above Centipede Demon, but definitely below Gwendolyn and Priscilla for sure. Now, Iron Golem feels like a really good capstone to Sen's Fortress. It feels like a mechanical challenge, you know, after running through a whole mechanical challenge, and I think that's really cool. The character design is really, really great, with that like tiny head signifying that it's a really, really strong thing. The fact that it can pick you up and throw you and just throw you off the edge of the arena instantly. Actually, the firebomb giant here does influence the fight, right? In the same way that the channeler will influence the Gaping Dragon's fight. So I completely forgot about that. I don't know why. So Iron Golem's a really cool fight. It does a lot of really cool things. The fact that you can knock it off the edge, and it's completely damage based, so you can get that regardless of your weapon, regardless of how much poise damage you're doing. So I really like the Iron Golem. But, well, yeah, I put it there. It does have a lot of health, but at that point in the game, you should probably be at a +10, especially since you can buy as many large Titanite chunks as you want, or sorry, large Titanite shards as you want from the Crestfallen Merchant. Plus the KHQ letting you right next to the Crestfallen Merchant that lets you go all the way back down to Andre basically instantly. So Iron Golem's a good fight. And, you know, once again, another thing that teaches you that you should be at this specific level at this certain point in the game, right? Calamite. Calamite used to be my favorite boss in the game. He was for quite a while. I really like Calamite. I think it's a really fun fight. though probably the hardest of the DLC bosses. And even when you know what you're doing, I would say either Calamy or Ornstein and Smo end up being the hardest in the game, at least for me personally with my playstyle and whatnot. So the worst thing by far about Calamy is this like weird diving hitbox, because it's a lot bigger than it looks. His neck hitboxes can be weird, but once you realize that you're supposed to roll away from him to dodge that, that kind of stops being an issue. Learning that in the first place can be annoying, but I still really, really like Calamy and would easily put him at top of S tier. I'm debating double S tier because, again, he was my favorite boss in the game for a while, right? But I just don't fight him very often anymore. Like, especially during my streams, I'll usually skip him because getting to him is such a chore, and the run back is really annoying. But I don't know. I'll put him in S for now. Artorias is cool, really fun, but it also kind of becomes rote eventually, right? So like, he attacks, and then depending on the attack, you attack again, or you counterattack, right? So he attacks, you attack, he attacks, you attack. It's very, very much turn-based. However, most bosses in this game are turn-based. Like Manus is extremely turn-based. However, Artorias, while being turn-based, is also extremely simple. And I know Artorias is one of the hardest bosses in the game, according to most people. Most people who play through the game once will consider Artorias one of the hardest. Probably not the hardest. That usually goes to Manus or, Ornstein and Smo. But Artorias is just like, he's extremely simple and extremely easy to get down consistently, at least for me, compared to the other difficult bosses. Like, Calamy has so many more moves, and those moves are so much more widely varied and have so many more different timings. Artorias is, you see him flying towards you, you dodge, and you win. The hardest to dodge, in my opinion, is probably the thrusting attack, like where he kind of like moves forward with his sword out in front of him, but you just roll to the side and you dodge it every time. The somersault attack is really cool, I think, because you can hit him in midair. It's completely safe to hit him in midair if you're walking around him counterclockwise. So you dodge to the right, or I think it works clockwise too, but you dodge as he's flipping towards you the first time. And then if he does a second one, it's totally safe to hit him in midair because he doesn't turn very much, right? Which I think is really cool. It is a really good fight, but I don't think I'd put it above Capra, just because it's too simple to learn, in my opinion. I don't know. Definitely above those two. Yeah, that feels like a good spot. Well, above Asylum Demon too. Yeah, that feels good. Manus. I used to despise Manus. I used to think Manus was the worst boss in the game. And a lot of people say he feels like a Bloodborne boss, and I could not disagree more with that, because Manus is extremely turn-based, right? Which is all of what Dark Souls 1 is about. I really, really enjoy the Manus fight, though. Now, anyway. So learning it was awful. One of the worst experiences I've had with Dark Souls 1. However, now that I know it, I've beaten him completely hitless, like twice on stream, and then a few other times just casually playing the game, I beat him hitless. And even without the silver pendant, right? The fact that the silver pendant kind of nullifies some of his most annoying attacks. I like Manus now, but learning him was awful, and just for that, I'm gonna put him below S tier. Like right now, if I wanted to fight a Dark Souls boss, Manus would be near the top of the list of where I would want to fight him in the order that I would want to fight the bosses. However, because of how terrible learning him was, I'm gonna put him down to here, I think. That feels right. Moonlight Butterfly. Boring, slow, extremely build dependent. You can summon Beatrice, I guess. I don't know. I've actually never summoned Beatrice for the Moonlight Butterfly. But Butterfly was probably the second or third hardest boss in the entire game in my Soul Level 1 New Game Plus 6 playthrough. Nito was easily the hardest. I still haven't beat him, I don't think. But Butterfly took me so long because one hit would instantly kill me. And like the projectile like shotgun spread is one of the hardest attacks in the game to dodge for me. The magic like tracking projectile is really easy to dodge. The beam attack is pretty easy to dodge, but where she flies over the bridge and shoots down is also one of the hardest in the game for me to dodge, and I have no idea why. it tracks a lot, and I'm not really sure if you're just supposed to run when that happens. um, but just because of how long it takes for you to be able to attack her, even if you're doing like a ranged build, like a caster or an archer, right? You still have very limited attack opportunities because you have to attack immediately after she, oh, excuse me, immediately after she attacks. And then you have, like a couple seconds to actually be able to attack before she retaliates extremely quickly. So, Moonlight Butterfly, ugh, I don't know, I wouldn't put her that low. She's less fun than Pinwheel. Would I rather fight her than those two, though? Or is she a better fight than those two, in my opinion? I don't know. It feels weird, because these two feel like they're basically the same quality to me. Or at least the same level of fun for me, personally. But Butterfly, I don't know, I think I'd put Butterfly below, just because of how difficult some of the attacks are to dodge. Ornstein and Smo, once again, one of the hardest bosses in the game for me. Probably second or third, compared to Nido and Calamite. I don't know. They're fun, but they can absolutely frame trap you, which is really annoying. Smo's charge is really annoying. Ornstein's glitchy, like, I'm gonna get you, is also really dumb. I think. Super Ornstein sucks. Probably the worst boss in the game if I'm just going on Super Ornstein alone, but Super Ornstein is entirely optional, and Super Smo is pretty easy. Not, I don't know, probably on the same level as Seath for me, actually, just how forgettable it is. But because of the actual Ornstein and Smo fight leading up to it, it's significantly better than Seath. It's also one of the things that like really skill checks a build, right? So if I'm going through the game with some random weapon that I've never used before and being like, oh, this is pretty fun, I don't see why people use this, I'll get to Ornstein and Smo and immediately understand why nobody's ever used that weapon. Ornstein and Smo is like if you can beat them, you can beat the rest of the game. So I don't know. I think I'm actually going to put them low B tier. Yeah, that feels right. Gwyn, if you don't parry, is the hardest boss in the game. But the fact that you can completely nullify his difficulty by parrying is awesome and feels perfectly in line with the lore, with him being like a fallen lord, right? Not nearly at his peak prime strength or whatever. I really like Gwyn story-wise. The Gwyn fight is fun. It's really fun to just like parry Gwyn to death. And it was where I learned how to parry in Dark Souls 1. Fighting Gwyn for the first time, I learned to parry, and then I carried that over into the rest of the game and learned to parry the other enemies that I could parry. But he's also unnecessarily easy, and if you don't parry him, he's unnecessarily difficult for sure. So, I don't know. I think I'd put him on par with Orange and Smo, maybe a little bit better for me personally. Demon Fire Sage. Basically just the Asylum Demon, but with a couple extra attacks. Same as Strain Demon. However, I know a lot of people really don't like that, but him being there makes sense, right? I don't know. I don't think he's that bad of a fight. He's a pretty easy fight, which kind of removes the offensiveness of them just reusing the Asylum Demon. Also, he's kind of optional anyway, and the Stray Demon is definitely optional, right? So, I don't know. Demon Fire Sage is inoffensive at worst, and like I don't know. He's fine. Demon Fire Sage is fine. He does a lot of damage though. You're not prepared. He does so much damage. It's funny. Okay, Stray Demon. Oof. Honestly, same as Demon Fire Sage. He's completely optional, and he's a really easy way to get early souls. And he drops a Titanite slab. Plus, going back to the Asylum is super cool, and the floor falling out from where you fought the last boss to reveal the next boss is super cool. So I'm actually gonna put him above those three. Sanctuary Guardian, easily favorite boss in Dark Souls 1, not even close. Well, actually it is kind of close with Black Dragon Calamite, to be honest. But the Sanctuary Guardian is so much fun. It's like you're constantly weaving in and out of the attacks. Every single attack, it gives you an attack opportunity, but you have to be able to recognize it, right? Otherwise, he's going to jump away and then continue attacking you. And then it completely removes like the rote turn-based feeling of Artorias by having the ranged lightning attacks that can be extremely difficult to dodge if you don't know what you're doing. And even I can't consistently dodge some of the lightning attacks anymore, or still yet, right? I love the Sanctuary Guardian. Getting into the DLC early, sometimes I get into the DLC early just because I want to fight the Sanctuary Guardian with a little bit more health. Because as is, he doesn't have very much health. But either way, easily my favorite boss in the game. Probably my favorite boss in this series. Definitely up there. It's super, super fun. Taurus Demon. Like I said earlier, he has the two archers in his arena. I think otherwise it's a fun fight. He can jump off the bridge, which is really funny. And one of my favorite things about the Taurus Demon. There are so many ways of fighting him. He feels super imposing, but he also feels extremely beatable. The fact that the ladder is there and you can plunging attack him just like you did with the Asylum Demon is super cool. The Taurus Demon as a boss is fun. However, some of the hitboxes are kind of wonky, especially when he's like stepping around and can just stagger you out of nowhere. That can be really annoying. I don't know. I do like him a lot, but he feels more like a bump in the road now, especially after I've played the game so many times. So I'm going to put him... Why did I put Pinwheel below Gaping Dragon? What? Yeah, that feels right. Okay, Dark Souls 2. Now, these are probably going to be a lot less educated, or like, just because I haven't played Dark Souls 2 nearly as much as Dark Souls 1. I haven't played Dark Souls 3 either, but I've played Dark Souls 3 extremely recently. So hopefully my opinions on those will be a little bit more recent. Anyway, Ava. I don't like the Ava fight. I do think the whole Priestess Eye is pretty cool. The fact that she shatters your weapon extremely fast is so frustrating, especially if you just don't have any repair powder, because you've never had an issue with that for the rest of the game. The movesets, like the swipes, are extremely fast, especially for Dark Souls 2. And then like the ice crystals coming up everywhere. But despite it being difficult, I do think it's a pretty interesting and cool fight. Like the fact that this random cat can use Homing Soul Mass. That was a Homing Soul Mass attack, right? Well, either way, it uses like ice attacks, right? So, I don't know. I was fine, I guess. Definitely wouldn't put her that high. I don't know. Definitely not one of my favorites to fight. And Eliam Lois is like in the middle of the road when it comes to Dark Souls 2 DLC. So, I don't know. That feels fine. Better than Nido and worse than Winston Snow. Aldia, Scholar of the First Sin. Aldia is kind of a nothing boss, right? It's more of a lore boss than anything. So some of the attacks can be kind of hard to dodge, and the tells are really good, I think. And in terms of atmosphere, it's really cool. The music is really, really good for the fight. So I'd put Aldia, I don't know, honestly, probably kind of the same. It's easy and boring, but lore-wise, it's pretty cool. And the tells are good and all that, and it's like a really visually interesting fight in a very interesting lore location. So yeah, I'd put it there. That feels good. Ancient Dragon isn't as bad as everyone says, mostly because of the toe strap, where you can just sit in its toes and it can't hurt you. And like, it has a lot of health, but other than that, I don't know, it's a fine dragon fight. I know that people say, or I've heard a couple people say that you can like attack its head. It becomes a lot more interesting of a fight because its head takes more damage. And its attacks feel like they're meant to engage you while you're in front of it, but I haven't actually fought it like that yet. So just for that, just because I am not super educated on this fight, I'm also going to put it in a B tier. I know a lot of things are going into B tier. I promise it'll change. Anyway, Dark Lurker. Dark Lurker is super cool. Getting to Dark Lurker, awful. One of the worst runbacks in the series. Not the worst in the series, and definitely not the worst in Dark Souls 2, but it's not great. However, the boss itself is really fun, and honestly, I think that makes up for it a lot, especially once you get to phase 2, where she splits into the two Dark Lurkers and can, like, the way that those moves synergize with each other feels so great. I love the Dark Lurker, despite how simple the moveset is. So I'm going to put her into A tier. But because of the run back, I'm going to put her below Iron Golem. I think that makes sense. Dragon Rider is hilarious. Because you can knock it off the edge, right? You can just make it walk to its death. I think that's really funny. And the fact that you can engage with the arena, like change the arena and change your experience with the fight, by exploring the level more thoroughly and pulling the levers, right? It took me so long to even find the second lever. I didn't know it was there for the longest time, just because I didn't look around that one specific arena after I took out the 3 enemies. But the fight itself is extremely easy, which is fine. It's like a potential first boss of the game. And as a tutorial boss, I think it works really well. However, again, it's a really easy, simple, kind of boring boss fight. So, I don't want to put it in B tier. It feels better than B tier, but it's not. I would absolutely put it above all these, though. I'm going to put over there. Yeah, okay, that's better. Twin Dragon Riders. I don't know, one of the better gank fights in the series, in my opinion. Just because the archer one has so little health, you can knock the archer one down early. And even if you don't, it's fun to dodge the archer while taking out the melee one. It just adds so much to the initial Dragon Rider fight. However, it's also extremely easy for where it is in the game, just because they have so little health compared to basically everything else there. I don't know. I definitely put it above normal Dragon Rider, but where would I put it, honestly? Why is Orn... Well, okay, no, I was going to say, why is Ornstein's bow that low? Why did I put it that low? But it's just because of the 2 second phases being boring and not great. I don't know, I feel like I should put Ornstein's bow higher than that, though. Yeah, I'll put Ornstein's bow top of B tier. There's just a lot going on with Ornstein's bow, especially with how difficult they are at the end of such a cool area and what they guard. So Ornstein's bow being at top of B tier makes more sense to me. But Iron Golem, I think I was a little bit too gracious to Iron Golem as well. So yeah, okay, that feels so much better. Alana the Squalid Queen is one of my favorite bosses in Dark Souls 2. Nearly topping off my favorite DLC as well. A lot better than Sin, in my opinion. I did not like the Sin fight very much, but we'll get there. Alana is super cool. The fact that she can summon Velshot, and you have to like dodge Velshot while taking out Alana with her range attacks and everything. Or if you get the skeletons, you know, they're extremely easy to take out. And then you get her to summon Velshot by taking out the skeletons, while also getting her in the crossfire while you're fighting the skeletons. I think it's a super interesting fight. But where would I put it compared to these? I think I'd put it above Bell Gargoyles. That feels good. Flexile Sentry is strange. I like the arena. I like that the water comes up, but it's a very boring, forgettable fight outside of that. It's a really cool design, though. And the fact that it has 2 movesets basically built in, and the fact that like it has attacks using its opposite moveset of the one that's currently facing you, like how the swords can stab over the one with the maces. I think that's really cool. So I do like the Flexile Sentry quite a bit, despite it being pretty easy. So I'll put it there. Not that high. There we go. That's better. Demon of Dawn. I mean, Demon of Song. It's gross and weird and easy and kind of boring. But I like the design. The arena is super pretty. I don't know. Definitely better than those. Yeah, that feels good. I like that. Duke's Freya. I have arachnophobia. The Duke's Freya itself doesn't bother me, but the dozens of spiders around the arena mess me up so bad. But outside of that, like if you just carry a torch in and if you have to like go back and forth between the faces, I think it's a really fun like little game of cat and mouse where you're the mouse but you're killing the cat. I think it's super cool. The moveset is pretty fun and works really well with that, like the web spinning and everything and getting slowed down while you're trying to go to the other head, right? So I do like Freya quite a bit. It just as a boss fight itself, the run back is a little long, but overall it's fine, especially if you have torches to nullify the spiders. I don't know. Duke's Freya is fine. B, I don't want to put everything in B, but that's like where everything feels like it should go. I'd put Freya. Yeah, that feels good. Gank Squad, one of the infamous DLC bosses. Gank Squad has a lot of health if you summon, like way too much health if you summon. But if you don't summon, you're getting ganked by 3 enemies, right? However, with one of them being an archer, one of them being a tank, and one of them, you know, being a lot faster than the other 2, I feel like it works a lot better because you can either rush the archer or bait the, I don't remember their names, the one that isn't Havel away from the Havel monster, and then it becomes a lot more fun of a fight. But it's just not fun either way. But it's really not as bad as it could be. So I'm gonna put C above ceaseless. Yeah. The Belfry gargoyles. Worse obviously than the Bell gargoyles. It's a lot, right? So if you go in with like a +6 or whatever you generally have when you get to that point in the game, before the center, it's extremely difficult. But if you do it, after the center or after you get a +10 and come back and you're exploring, it's really not that bad. Kind of forgettable. But if you do it at the time that you're supposed to, it's way too hard, and their movesets really don't feel like they work together. It feels like you have to defeat one before engaging another, but you can't really do that sometimes. So, C rank. Yeah, I like that. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah. Giant Lord is really good for farming souls. There are multiple ways to fight him. The run up to him is super cool. The fact that there's like a war going on in the arena that you fight him in is awesome. His moveset is pretty simple, and his hitboxes can be kind of janky, especially since it's just like the last giant, but a little bit harder. But if you stand up on the platform, he gains a completely different moveset, even if it's just as easy and simple to dodge. But with everything else surrounding it, I think it's a higher B rank. I'm not sure where though. Yeah, that feels right. I like that. That's a good spot for it. Guardian Dragon. I don't like that it flies away constantly. Its fire attacks can be weird. Like, it's difficult to know where it's going to hit. And the fact that you need to run close to it, like when it goes up on the wall to shoot down fire, it doesn't have very much health, I guess, which kind of is a boon because you don't need to worry about it too much. The run back to it kind of sucks, especially with the 2 or 3 ogres. I don't remember how many it is. I think there are 3 if the one in the cage comes down, but I don't know how to make the one in the cage come down. Anyway, the run back sucks, is my point. But the fight itself isn't that awful, but it's also kind of just forgettable. Yeah, okay, that feels good. C rank is a good spot for it. Burnt Ivory King. Ooh. Okay, this is going to be kind of controversial. Probably one of my least favorite fights in the DLC. Just because of the lead up to it, right? Like, it's super awesome that you have the 4 knights coming in with you to fight their former king because he's been corrupted by the chaos. It is super awesome. It is so cool. Just like Radon, yeah. That is so awesome. However, fighting, what is it, like 10 ads before actually getting to the boss is so not fun. And then the boss itself is such a boring moveset and weird hitboxes, and is annoying to dodge, and it's just like such a weird, not great fight, especially after you have the whole like armies battling thing, which is super awesome, but even then isn't that great because the enemies themselves don't have that interesting in movesets and can shred your allies if you're not, like putting in way more work than them. So it feels like they're kind of useless even though they steal the portals. And if you don't have all 4, you're going to have ads while you're fighting the boss, which is super dumb. So, Burnt Ivory King is not great. I'd honestly put it below Belfry Gargoyles. I would rather fight the Belfry Gargoyles just because I can come back to them once I'm stronger. Covetous Demon. Would I put it in F tier? It's one of my least favorite bosses in the game. I'd put it in F tier. I think F tier is good for it. Covetous Demon. Boring, easy, simple. Funny, which definitely adds some points. Yeah, sure, that feels good. Just below Nito. The Last Giant is a pretty good tutorial boss. Like if we're counting the Last Giant as a tutorial boss rather than the Dragon Rider, I suppose they're both kind of tutorial bosses. Anyway, I think it's a decent tutorial boss. It really forces you to focus on positioning. The positioning is extremely important in Dark Souls 2. As well as like not focusing too much on dodging specifically. The phase change where it rips off its arm, along with all the lore behind it, is interesting. I think it's really fun. The cutscene beforehand is pretty cool, and adds a lot of mystique to it. So I don't know. I like the Last Giant, but definitely not my favorite tutorial boss. Let's see. Where did I put Dragon Rider? I think it's a little bit worse than Dragon Rider. The fight itself, as a tutorial, it's probably better, but I don't know. I like the Dragon Rider more. So, Looking Glass Knight. Looking Glass Knight is really cool. The gimmick is really interesting, if not very fun, because I don't like PvP in these games. But, you know, you can just play offline, and then it ceases to be a problem. Plus, if you focus damage on the Looking Glass Knight, it's pretty easy to take it out before it's able to summon, or even while it's summoning, or just after summoning. So, it's really not that relevant. The fact that its shield is always active is really cool, and once again emphasizes positioning. Dark Souls 2 really emphasizes positioning. All of the bosses that I've gone over so far, except for like Aldia, kind of showcase how important positioning really is. Maybe Demon of Song isn't that useful either, or Guardian Dragon. I don't know. Most of the bosses, is my point, really focus a lot on positioning in Dark Souls 2, especially significantly more than Dark Souls 1 and 3. And I think the Looking Glass Knight really showcases that a lot more than a lot of the other bosses. Plus the gimmick is interesting. The fight itself is really fun. I like the Looking Glass Knight. Not one of my favorites in Dark Souls 2, I don't think, but definitely not one of the worst in Dark Souls 2 by far. Lost Sinner, it's fine. I don't know. I like the gimmick that you can light up the room to make it easier to lock onto her. The lore of her like being corrupted by chaos is interesting, I think. And the moveset is fine, even though a couple of the hitboxes can be kind of weird. I like the jumping attacks. In New Game Plus, when you come back and she has the 2 pyromancers with her, that's really cool and interesting and fun. If extremely difficult, if you aren't at the level that you should be in New Game Plus, like if you use an ascetic, it becomes vastly more difficult. So I like the Lost Sinner, but she is just kind of meh sometimes, depending on your build. And it's like, oh, okay, Lost Sinner. Oh, there we go. It's over. So I think just for that, she kind of just belongs in B tier. But I like her more than a lot of these. I would rather fight Lost Sinner than like Iron Column. I don't know about Pinwheel. I think I'd put it there. That feels good. Blood and Zolin, I feel like are a pretty easy F tier because I have all of the same problems as Alpha, but this time there are 2 of them. Their attacks are not made to work together. Their run back is easily the worst in the series. Blood and Zolin sucks. Let's move on. Prowling Magus and Congregation, extremely forgettable, extremely easy. I don't hate them, but as a boss, like if I'm just considering their own thing, that feels like I could spot up with them. I don't know. Actually, just because they take less time than Seath, I'd put them there. Mytha's pretty cool. I like that you have to burn the windmill to get it spinning again to drain the poison. That's really cool. I think I know a lot of people are like, oh, why would you burn the metal windmill? But like, it's not moving. On top of the fact that there's a path leading directly up to the windmill, there's an enemy blocking it that doesn't attack you unless you approach it. I feel like it's pretty obvious that you're supposed to do something there. Maybe finding out that you're supposed to use a torch can be a little difficult, but now that we have the internet, that kind of ceases to be a problem. And then the Mytho fight itself is pretty good. Like, all of her attacks are very fun to dodge. Her magic attacks kind of at the same level of switch up as a Sanctuary Guardian. Her melee attacks can be fun to dodge, especially like her jumps and charges and stuff. I like Mytha, so I'd put her there. Yeah, that feels good. Nashandra. The curse orbs are probably the worst part of the fight, and other than that, she's just kind of fine. I don't know. I wouldn't put her, especially as a final boss. Gwyn is definitely better, but she's not that bad either. I think I'd rather fight her than Nito, just because Nito and below is kind of where it starts to get annoying. Actually, I'm gonna put this here. Oops. Yeah, that feels better. Okay. Old Iron King's hole is very annoying. The run back is extremely short, which is nice. Especially with a boss where you can just die instantly by not seeing the hole in the middle of the arena. A lot of the attacks are pretty simple to dodge, all things considered. But like not in a way that makes them unfun, but at the same time, it has the same level of difficulty as Ceaseless, just with slightly better hitboxes. The worst part is probably the fire breath that you just kind of have to run away from. I don't like attacks where you just have to walk away, and that's the solution. That can be extremely annoying. So, Old Iron King, probably the worst of the four lords in my opinion, but even then isn't really that bad. So I don't know. I'll put Land King above Dragon Rider. No, above Aldia, but below Dragon Rider. Yeah, probably above Last Giant too, actually. Okay. Old Dragon Slayer. Probably my favorite incarnation of the Dragon Slayer archetype. Better than Super Ornstein, obviously. I think better than the Ornstein and Smo fight, just because we can't get frame trapped. Better than the Dragon Slayer. Is it better than the Dragon Slayer armor? Dragon Slayer armor is actually probably one of my favorite bosses in Dark Souls 3. I like the old Dragon Slayer. I think it's a really fun fight, but I don't think it's as fun as Dark Lurker. What about Four Kings? Would I put these above? I think I'd put these here, actually. Not like that. There we go. Yeah, that feels good. Executioner's Chariot. I think it's cool that if you have high enough ADP, you can run past. You can also use a shield, I think, to block the spikes on the wheels. Or you can just hide in the little nooks. Taking out the Necromancers can be really fun, and even if you don't take out the Necromancers, they don't really bother you when you're fighting the horse on its own. So there are a lot of ways to engage with the fight, and it's extremely unique. It's a very fun gimmick. The horse fight at the end is pretty simple. It's pretty easy, but it's like interesting in a lot of ways because it has attacks that other bosses in the game just don't have. It's a lot more unique than a lot of the bosses in the game. But overall, I think it's mostly just an okay fight. I'd put the execute. Oh, and the run back sucks. Oh my god, all of the like dark weapon guys, and then the spirit there, like the random red phantom. Like, why is that there? So just because of the run back, I think I'm gonna put it significantly lower, but it still belongs in B tier. I feel like. Now the Pursuer is one of my favorite bosses in the series, for sure. It's what really taught me that positioning is extremely important in Dark Souls 2. Would I put it in double S tier? I don't know. It's definitely up there. It's definitely one of my favorite bosses in Dark Souls 2, but I don't think I would quite give it double S. Yeah. Like going back to it, obviously it's extremely easy. There are other instances of the Pursuer throughout the game, which is really cool, I think. The fact that you can fight the Pursuer extremely easy, the fact that positioning is by far the most important part of the Pursuer fight. You do not need iframes at all to beat the Pursuer. Like, obviously, you're going to have low ADP when you get there, so it was designed like that. But the fact that even regardless of that, I think it's really fun that it focuses almost exclusively on positioning. As much as the other bosses, positioning is important, especially like Looking Glass Knight, the Pursuer is pure positioning, right? And I think that's super fun. The fact that you can beat it before even getting to the boss arena is super cool. I love the Pursuer. Great fight. Oh, and then when you get into the boss arena, the ballistas there, the fact that you can parry the boss, that's super fun. And I wish you could parry more bosses throughout the series. Okay. Which, that might feel like a contradiction once I get to one of the Dark Souls 3 bosses, but we'll get there. Fume Knight. Fume Knight's fine. I don't know. He's fine. He's extremely easy. Pretty boring moveset. The gimmick where he can just heal if you don't have enough of the key item, and you can't even have enough to do everything if you already explored the entirety of Room Tower, is really stupid. So I don't know. Fume Knight's fine. Where would I put Fume Knight? That feels good. I don't know. Fume Knight is extremely mid to me. Royal Rat Vanguard. I like the Vanguard probably more than the Authority, but I also don't dislike the Authority. The Vanguard, like, it's just a bunch of rats. But it was also one of the first Souls bosses I ever fought. And it killed me a lot. It took me a lot of time to actually be able to beat the Vanguard. And then, like, the area leading up to it is pretty cool, especially with all the Ferris Lockstone slots. I like the Vanguard quite a bit, all things considered, though obviously it's not, anywhere near the quality of Looking Glass Knight or whatever. So as is, it's not a bad fight, but as a boss, same with like the Prowling Magus and Congregation, it's just like not there. I don't know. I definitely put it above Gank Squad though. Yeah, okay, that feels good. Royal Rat Authority, as long as you don't get toxic in the beginning, which can be difficult, but honestly isn't really that bad. You just like attack them before they attack you, and that's not that difficult to do. Um, you know, especially it's considering it's a Dark Souls game. And then the boss itself has some interesting moves. It has the same kind of like puking thing as the Gaping Dragon, uh, but the moveset is fun. I think the moveset is on par with Sif, but just because of like the toxic stuff and um, like the random puking and like the weird moveset, how easy it is, I'm gonna put it a little bit below Gaping Dragon instead. Now, Ruin Sentinels, definitely S tier. Easily my favorite boss in the entirety of Dark Souls 2. I love the Ruin Sentinels so much. The best gank fight in the series, and it's not even close. Because like, like Alana is up there, but the Ruin Sentinels are just so much better. You have the platform that you first get on that you can take out the first Ruin Sentinel, learn its moveset with, um, like gauge the scope of the room and how many you're gonna have to fight. It's so good. And then once you actually have both of them attacking you, you can do quite a bit of damage to the first one before to the second one before the third one even spawns. And then when you're fighting the second and third one on their own, like down when you get down into the main arena part, right? One of them is going to throw their shield at you, which makes that one more aggressive, which makes it easier to attack, especially since it doesn't have a shield to block your attacks anyway. Such a good fight. Easily the best gank fight in the series, and my favorite boss in Dark Souls 2. But I guess it's kind of spoilers for the rest of these, but I don't know. The only one of these that I could see being my favorite boss, otherwise, if you didn't know, is like Sorolan, but my opinion on Sorolan will either surprise you or be like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Of course you don't like Sorolan. Notchka's fine. I don't know. I like Notchka. I like that you can cut her tails off. I like that you can just stand on her bag and cheese her. That's really funny. That's one of my favorite things about Notchka. But she can just like go under the sand and just make you not do anything for a while, which can be really annoying, especially since you just stand on the stone platform to completely ignore that attack. You don't even have to dodge when she gets back out. She has the same sort of thing where she can use her tails to stab you while you're in front of her, which feels extremely similar to the Flexile Sentry, even if the Flexile Sentry is a lot faster and just kind of a different attack entirely. Her magic can be really annoying and really fast, especially if you don't have iframes or a really good magic blocking shield. So if she feels middle of the road, but not bad by any means. I'd put her below Freya. Yeah, that feels good. Sin the Slumbering Dragon, like I said, not nearly as good as Ilana in my opinion, but isn't a bad fight. Probably one of the better dragon fights in Dark Souls 2. Though that's not really saying much. I don't know. The corroding your weapon super quick is super frustrating, just like Ava. Especially, you know, again, if you don't ever have that issue in the entire game, and then suddenly you fight this one boss, and it's like, oh, okay, my weapon immediately broke. Now what? I don't know. I don't like Sin very much. It's fine. Where did I put the other dragons? I'll find it eventually, I swear. I don't know. Yeah, Ancient Dragon. Definitely better than Ancient Dragon. I don't know. It's a good fight. I'm so conflicted because of my reasoning for putting some of these here. Like, it's a better fight than Demon of Song, right? Obviously. But also, there's so many things that I don't like about it, while there's nothing that I dislike about Demon of Song. It's just that's kind of boring. I don't know. That's a fine spot to put it, I think. I don't like Saruman, mostly because the run-up is the second worst in the game, in the series, by far. Like, the Frigid Outskirts is god-awful, but the run-up to Saruman in the memory is so bad. There are so many knights, and then you have the salamanders constantly spitting at you. It was one of the few things in the game that made me want to summon to get past it, just so I could say that I did it and not deal with it anymore. And then the fight itself is fine. I don't know. I definitely put it below Fume Knight. I don't like fighting Saruman though. You know, like Royal Rat Vanguard, I like fighting, but isn't a great boss. Gang Squad, I don't like fighting, but works well as a boss and has some interesting dynamics. Saruman, I just don't like fighting, but I don't feel like it deserves to go below Gang Squad because I like Saruman more than the Gang Squad. You know, I don't know. That's a fine spot. Skeleton Lords are really interesting and cool. Depending on the order that you defeat them, you'll get different skeletons. You can choose to take all of them out at once, which is pretty easy to do given their low health, but then you have to fight a lot of skeletons at once. Or you can take one down and then take out their armored skeletons and then take the next down. But then you'll be attacked from range with fireballs, So there's a lot of like unique dynamics in the Skeleton Lords fight. It's a really good gank fight. Obviously not nearly as good as Alana or the Ruin Sentinels, but I think it's still really good. Pretty good, but also really easy, even for where it is in the game. They have pretty low health and everything. So, I don't know. I'd probably put it just below Pinwheel. That feels right. Blue Smelter. I'm going to rank Normal Smelter first, I think. Normal Smelter is one of my favorite bosses in Dark Souls 2. Again, it's extremely important, your positioning, just like the Pursuer. Though it does have some janky hitboxes, which, I don't know, it's not that bad. But like, you have to be a little bit farther away from like the Sword Slam than you would expect, right? And the aura that constantly damages you really encourages life gems, which I think is really cool. The fact that normally life gems are just a way to get you through a long level, but here they are directly impacting the boss fight itself, which I think is really great, especially because they're such an integral mechanic to the rest of the game, and that's kind of the only boss fight that you're really encouraged to use them in, especially over Estus, like instead of Estus. Oh, excuse me. So that does get into like the negatives of using a consumable in a boss fight, but they're also life gems, and you're probably going to have a lot of them anyway, and it's an optional boss. So I do like Smelter Demon. I'd put it in A tier at least. Probably between those two. Yeah, that feels right. Blue Smelter, I've only fought once. The run there is significantly worse than Smelter Demon. People say the Smelter Demon run is bad, but like you pull the lever and then you can sprint straight to the fog wall completely unimpeded. I've done that run hitless so many times without despawning any enemies. I don't understand why people think it's that bad. Anyway, the Blue Smelter run is significantly worse. Obviously, you're intended to do it co-op, but that just increases the Blue Smelter's health. The timings are weird, but I don't think they're necessarily worse than the Smelter Demon, so I'm just going to put it in B tier because it's worse than normal Smelter, especially considering the run back. The bottom of B feels good. The Rotten, better than, what did I say was the worst Lord? I don't even remember. Old Iron King, better than Old Iron King, but not by much. It's a pretty boring fight, pretty easy. However, lore-wise, I think it's pretty cool. I like the fight. In terms of like where it is in the game, so I'll definitely put it up higher, but yeah, that feels right. Below Gaping, but better than Relight Authority. Throne Watcher and Defender are actually really fun. I really like Throne Watcher and Defender. I know people compare them to Ornstein as well, but that doesn't really work because at that point in the game, you're going to be, you know, a lot higher level than you would be for Ornstein and Smo. You're probably going to be taking them out extremely quickly because they don't have that much health, which is why they work as a gank fight as opposed to Ornstein and Smo, where they behave differently. And one of them is extremely defensive, one of them is extremely offensive, and then they can revive each other, so you need to make sure that you're taking them out quickly compared to each other. Or you can use the time that one takes to revive to take out the other, and then quickly take out the other, right? So you can take out I think the Watcher is the offensive one. So you can take out the Watcher, and then use that time to take out the Defender, and then take out the Watcher again, because the Watcher is easier to take out, because it doesn't have the shield, right? So I think it's a pretty good fight. I'd probably put it below 4 Kings, though, so that feels good in A rank. Elshta is another good one for Dark Souls 2. It's pretty simple, but the insane like resistance buff it gets in the second phase can be a little frustrating, especially if you're not expecting the fight to take that long and you haven't been rationing out your supplies for that. However, you know, the goal is to not get hit in the first place, so I feel like that's kind of a moot point. His moveset is interesting, I think, and really fun to fight against. So definitely one of the better fights in Dark Souls 2. I don't think I'd put it above Smelter. I probably wouldn't put it in A at all, but definitely very high B rank. Yeah, that feels good. Vendrick, lore fight, and that's it. Probably on par with Seath. Okay, Abyss Watchers. Okay, Abyss Watchers I have a lot to say on. I know I've talked about it in my Dark Souls 3 playthrough like videos. As a gank fight, I think they don't work at all. Like I know what they were going for, right? Having the boss help you defeat the boss is super interesting and super cool. But because the one that's supposed to help you, you can hurt it and it can hurt you, it's impossible to work with it. Like, it can distract the one that you're not fighting, but if they both happen to target onto the one that's supposed to be helping you, it can get extremely frustrating to try and kite one away so you can take it out while the one that is helping you takes out the other one, right? And even then, the one that's helping you is extremely weak, and basically only serves as a distraction while you take out the other one. And then the second phase is awful. The fire trails are so annoying. But it's because it has so little health, it's really not that bad. So I don't despise it, but it's definitely not one of my favorite Dark Souls 3 bosses. I don't know. Probably... God, it's so hard to compare them too, because Dark Souls 3 feels so different from the other games. Yeah, that feels good. I think that's a good spot to put the Abyss Watchers. Aldrich. Aldrich is not a good fight on its own. The run there is basically non-existent. You just run past a couple Silver Knights and a few Clerics, and that's it. Especially if you took out the beast that can curse you, right? Or even if you have to go all the way around, like it's 2 or 3 Silver Knights and then a few Clerics again. So ignoring the run back, the fight is fine. The like pools of fire it spews on the ground are kind of annoying, but basically non-existent. You could essentially just ignore them. The tracking magic has the same thing with the princes, and I think the princes are one of my favorite bosses in the series. So that's really not even worth considering as that big of a negative. The worst thing by far is the arrow rain, which is just stop fighting me and run away for a second, which I obviously don't like. But even then, I don't know, it's not that bad. And like the body being super long, and if you attack the end of the body, you can basically just ignore the AoE when it teleports away and get some extra damage. I think that's pretty cool. So I think it's better than the Abyss Watchers, but not by much. Ancient Wyvern. It's just like a bad part of the worst level of the game. I don't like Ancient Wyvern. Vort of the Boreal Valley. Now, Eodex Gundyr is is probably my least favorite tutorial boss in the series, though it's not that bad, all things considered. I think bottom B suits it just fine, because the second phase is just awful. But if you consider Vort, okay, I should probably clarify. The second phase is bad because the animations are difficult to read, because the Pus of Man part pulsates like basically constantly. So I really didn't like Eodex Gundyr, specifically for the second phase. The first phase is really good, and if it was just the first phase, it'd be a really good tutorial boss. But then that also kind of wouldn't work for Champion Gundyr. Anyway, Vort, if you consider Vort a tutorial boss as well, I think it works really well because it kind of teaches you how to deal with more beast type enemies. Kind of like how there's the juxtaposition between Father Gascoigne and the Cleric base in Bloodborne, right? But then the second phase, his entire body becoming a hitbox during certain attacks. Like if you're completely behind him and he swings his hammer, that can still hit you, which is really annoying. So the second phase, once again, kind of makes Vort significantly worse than he would be otherwise. Obviously, he's super early in the game, so he has super low health. But the frostbite being able to hit you, even if you dodge in certain instances, or the hitbox that causes the frostbite buildup lasting so long. In my first playthrough of the game, I beat him second try, but I died at the same time that I killed him because of the frostbite. I don't like Vort very much, even as such an early fight. Probably on par with Eodex Gundyr, honestly. Crystal Sage, once again, is basically just worse than Pinwheel. It's like worse Pinwheel. The clones are frustrating to deal with, especially since they're spread out over such a wide arena. And then you have the attacks that come out extremely fast, like the trail of crystals that just appears on the ground extremely quickly and does so much damage to you. The extremely persistent tracking magic, it's not nearly as bad as the Four Kings tracking magic, but it's still really annoying, like the spiky crystal ball one, right? So one of my not one of my least favorite bosses in Dark Souls 3, but definitely not anywhere near one of my favorites. Definitely lower B rank. I'm not sure where though. Probably put it above Gwendolyn and Priscilla. I think I'd put it below the Twin Dragon Riders though. Okay, Curse-Rotted Greatwood. I really like the Waypoint gimmick, right? I think that's really fun, and I really like the arena, how there are the enemies with you, but you can kind of ignore them because the Curse-Rotted Greatwood will actually take them out for you, and then halfway through, the entire arena will collapse, the other enemies disappear, but then it gains more difficult moves to dodge with the hand. There are a couple things I don't like when it farts, and there's just like that pool on the ground that you have to wait to disappear. before you can actually go attack it again. It's one of those stop attacking me for a second attacks, which is really annoying. And then the one where it like shakes its head and makes the fruit fall down on you. That one can be frustrating and has like really, really strange hitboxes. Other than that though, it's a pretty good fight. And depending on when you fight it, like the weak point thing is really interesting. Significantly better than Wolnir's weak points because that's just on the arms. Just like, okay, like for this you actually have to analyze the entire boss and all that. So I would put Curse of Greatwood. It's good, but it's not like, you know, really, really good. I'd probably put it around there. Also probably one of the most forgettable bosses in Dark Souls 3 just because of where it's at. Dance for the Boreal Valley is easily double S tier. One of my favorite bosses in the series. I would probably put her above Ruin Sentinels, not above Sanctuary Guardian though. I like her for probably the same reasons I like the Sanctuary Guardian. It feels like a dance. The different timing from the other bosses in the game make it extremely memorable. Also, the fact that you can fight her super early. The second phase, starting with a spin attack, that really like shows you that the second phase is going to be far more aggressive. I love the dancer fight. It's so good. Dodging each attack feels intuitive, but it's still difficult because of the strange timing compared to the other bosses, right? I really like the dancer. Deacons of the Deep is forgettable and annoying and is non-optional for some reason because it gives you the thing that lets you get into Irothil, which I really don't like. But it's also like kind of forgettable. If you don't have good damage, it sucks, right? If you go into the Deacons with super low damage, it's one of the worst bosses in the series. But if you have decent damage, it's just kind of forgettable. So for that reason, I'm gonna put it there, below Olan King and above Last Giant. Old Demon King. I don't know. Combustion comes out way quicker than it should. The slam attacks are fine. The one where it like summons the meteors can be annoying, especially since you just kind of have to run. It's like, again, one of those stop attacking me attacks. It exploding and then completely stopping attacking for the rest of the fight once you get hit below a certain threshold of health, I think is pretty cool. I like Old Demon King, but not one of my favorite bosses in the game for sure. I'd put it above Moonlight Butterfly. I think I'd probably put it, actually, definitely better than Crystal Sage. I don't know what I'm thinking. I don't know. It's kind of hard to place this one because like I like it, and when I think about it, I want to fight it more than, you know, like say the Giant Lord because it's more interesting to fight. But it also doesn't have like the crazy cool arena that the Giant Lord has, you know. Or like the Flexile Sentry doesn't have that interesting gimmicks and like the positional stuff that I really like about the Flexile Sentry. So it's kind of hard to rank these together. I probably should have done one game at a time, but I don't know, this works fine. Demon Prince is probably the best boss from the DLC, in my opinion, from either DLC. I really like the Demon Princes. They work really well together, especially because one is active at a time, right? One is super aggressive, while the other one kind of hangs back and does a really well telegraphed poison move, as opposed to the gargoyles in Elden Ring that just have the instant poison damage move, which is so stupid. Sometimes they can both be aggressive at the same time, and at that point you just kind of need to back off. But I feel like that's pretty obvious and pretty well telegraphed. And it's one of the instances that I don't think a stop attacking instance is that bad, because you're kind of choosing to. You can still absolutely attack them, especially if their attacks happen to line up together. It can be a great way to get some extra damage that you weren't expecting to get. I really like the Demon Princes. I would probably put them A tier, probably above Artorias, or sorry, below Artorias. I put them above Artorias actually. Would I put it above Manus? Well, no, Manus has like the learning issue. That's why it's that low. Dragon Slayer Armor is one of the best bosses in Dark Souls 3, for sure. It turtles a lot, which can be kind of annoying. And then the butterflies can be a little bit annoying to dodge, or the angels, or whatever you want to call them. It's kind of hard to tell, you know, when they're going to show up. But it's telegraphed fine. They're not that bad to dodge, especially if it's anything other than like the constant projectile, the homing projectiles, right? So Dragon Slayer Armor has a lot of really fun attacks, like the fake out riposte opportunity is funny. So I don't know, I'd probably put him below Artorias, below Manus, above Manus, and Asylum Demon. Okay, Champion's Gravetender. and Great Wolf. I just fought this one today, actually, and I probably shouldn't have because my RSI is not doing any better. But the moveset on the NPC, like having an NPC as a boss at all is kind of like, what? Why would you do that? And then like the 3 wolves with it kind of makes up for that, though. Honestly, it's a really simple moveset. The weapon you get from it is kind of cool. The arena is really, really pretty, and I've never really noticed that before. That's not something I usually focus on, but I love the arena for the Champion's Gravetender. The fight, I don't know, it's kind of forgettable. It's probably the most forgettable DLC fight, especially since it's completely optional. So I don't know, I'd probably put it in like C above Nito. Half-Light, Spear of the Church, awful. It's terrible. You have the Painting Guardian constantly spawning and attacking you, which is so dumb when you already have a fast NPC or potentially a player attacking you. God, yeah, definitely one of my least favorite bosses in the series. I don't know why I put Ancient Wyvern below both of those. I don't know. Ancient Wyvern can go up a rank, I think. Wolnir, once again, has the wing point gimmick, which is cool, but it's on the arms, and if you don't get the one on his sword arm first, like the single bracelet on a sword arm, it just becomes vastly more difficult. But if you do that one first, it becomes way too easy, because while he's pulling the sword out, you can just attack the other two like for free and you just win. He has some interesting attacks, like he can summon a whole skeleton army, but you just never see that. Him moving forward, like literally just moving forward, is his most dangerous attack by far, because if you're anywhere near his ribcage, you'll be taking tons of damage and just die. But like that never happens because he doesn't get an opportunity to, because his weak points are too weak. So I don't like Wolnir, but yeah, that's fine. Champion Gundyr, once again, one of the best bosses in Dark Souls 3. Parrying him is really fun. I thought it was really annoying to dodge like the charge attack for a while, but after playing it more recently, it's really not that bad to dodge. I think it's because his stomp into the charge throws me off so much and makes it vastly more difficult to dodge, and is super frustrating, especially because the stomp has such a like weird tell to it. And then I don't know, like again, being able to parry him is really cool and really fun, and I think it makes the boss significantly more fun. I really like Champion Gundyr in terms of Dark Souls 3, but it does have some annoyances. I like that it doesn't explode into a pus of man. If it did that, it would probably be one of the worst bosses in the series. But because it doesn't, I'm probably going to put it top. I'm going to move Demon Princes up to S tier. Yeah, and then Champion Gundyr top of A feels good. Twin Princes, second favorite boss in Dark Souls 3. Yeah, that's fine. The first phase is super easy, obviously, but the constant teleporting can really throw you off. It's a great switch up. On top of like the attacking out of like teleporting to you, right? So like when he's coming out of the teleport, he can immediately attack, or teleporting can lead into an attack, which is super cool. It's a great switch up. And then the second phase, once you get the projectiles, it's like it adds so many more dynamics to the fight. I really, really like the Twin Princes. Super, super fun fight. One of the best in the series. Midir is overrated. I don't love Midir. I don't hate Midir by any means. The fight is way, way too long. And like, he has some really, really annoying attacks, like his charge attack, his like biting grab attack can be frustrating. His laser attack is super dumb. But I don't know, it's not that bad. I'm going to put him in B tier, I think. Where, though? I don't really know where to put him, to be honest. I think he's on, well, because he's more fun than Taurus Demon, right? Because Taurus Demon is so simplistic, but he's also a lot more annoying than Taurus Demon. So, like, again, it's really hard to rank these bosses. Yeah, that feels good. Nameless King, my least favorite boss in Dark Souls 3, I think. That's not true. One of my least favorite actual bosses in Dark Souls 3. Because, like, Champion's Gravetender doesn't really feel much like an actual boss. Wolnir is barely a boss. Wyvern is just a chunk of level, and then Half-Light is just an NPC. But Nameless is my least favorite actual boss. The first phase is cool. I like hitting the head, I like getting the stagger super quickly. But the camera in the first phase is so terrible. And it was the only boss in the game that I actually raged at. Like, I died probably the same amount of times to Champion Gundyr, but I didn't actually rage at Champion Gundyr because it felt fair. But the Nameless King has so many, like, weird things that don't feel like my fault. I don't know. First phase is fine. Even if the camera is terrible. Second phase is awful. Just so terrible. Osiris has like the weird no-tell charge, but other than that, I think Osiris is actually a really good fight. Honestly, probably on par with Velstadt, if not a little bit better. I actually really like Osiris. I didn't know I liked Osiris. I thought Osiris was one of my least favorite, but after doing this series where I like, playing through Dark Souls 3 again, I actually really liked Osiris. That was a fun fight. Pontiff Solarman is probably my least favorite. Another one of my least favorites in the game. I do like the second phase with the Shade attacking you and then Pontiff following it up. I think that's a really cool thing. And if that was the entire fight, I would like it so much more. But instead, like, positioning basically just doesn't matter. He has a lot of really annoying attacks that come out extremely quickly, really weird, bad hitboxes. Like his projectile attacks are really dumb and extremely weird to learn the timing of. I just don't like Pontiff. You can parry him, which makes it a lot easier, but like, I don't know, it removes a lot of the annoyances because you kill him quicker, obviously, but I don't like Dark Souls 3 parrying. I don't know, I don't love Pontiff. Probably, yeah, that's probably a good spot to put him. I don't know. I really don't like Pontiff though. And like, my opinion on him didn't change whatsoever. I at least like the Nameless King a little bit more than I did before, but I just don't like Pontiff, and I never have. Yeah, I just get frustrated every time I fight Pontiff. I think that's why I'm putting him solo. Okay, Yorm the Giant. God, my least favorite, like, spectacle fight, but because it's a spectacle fight, it doesn't really have an opportunity to be bad. It's just kind of boring. Like, you sit there, you charge the weapon, you dodge, and then you attack, and then you do that 5 times, and that's the whole fight. And then if you have, what's his name? Siegmeyer? Whatever, the Dark Souls 3 one, the Dark Souls 3 Onion Man, when you have him in there, it just becomes easier because then Yorm will focus on him instead. And then you can kill him even easier and have no issues with the fight whatsoever. And it's just such a boring fight. And the gimmick isn't even that cool, especially since you can't use anything even similar to it. Like, the Storm Ruler just does not work the same outside of that fight. Like, at least the Serpent Hunter is useful outside of the Rykard fight, right? The Storm Ruler just kind of sucks. It's like a mid greatsword with a useless weapon art. So, I don't know. Yorm is, and then obviously if you don't use the sword, it's just an overly drawn out, boring fight. So, I don't know. Probably put him there. Sister Freyde is way too fast, way too aggressive. However, the second phase sucks. The second phase is the worst part about the fight. If it was just the first phase and then the fake out and then the third phase, I would like the fight so much more. But the second phase is so frustrating, especially since Father Ariandel can just spew lava all the way across the room instantly. Or like, if you're up on him, he can just completely obscure your view of Freyde. And then Father Ariandel can just like turn on a dime to hit you with the bowl while he's swinging up and down instead of like around, like it would be as if he was actually turning. I don't like the Sister Freyde fight, mostly because of phase 2. Phase 1 and 3, she's way too aggressive, and it just feels like you're biding your time until she slips up and you can actually get an attack opportunity, which just isn't fun, which is like my main problem with a lot of Elden Ring boss fights, especially like, Malekith or whatever. Sister Freyde has a very similar, if significantly less prevalent issue in the same way, but it does feel really, really good to beat Freyde either way. So I don't know. I'd put her on par with Midir, I think. Would I? Yeah, I would. Twin Dragon? Yeah, okay. No, that feels good. Actually, I like that positioning a lot. Slate Gale. One of my least favorites in Dark Souls 3, once again. Probably on par with Nameless. Like, the fight is way too long. And then the third phase just, like, adds on 2 combos that have never had that combo extension ever before, which I really don't like, because it means you can't learn the boss via anything other than trial and error, especially because it uses things that it has already used before and then changes them. I do like the cape because it just makes the rolling timing more tight, rather than, you know, the Abyss Watchers where you basically have to spam roll to dodge the fire, which is really annoying. But I don't like Gale. Too long of a fight. It's pretty easy, but it also has some of the most annoying things about Dark Souls 3. Like the insanely long combos that a lot of normal enemies have. And then, like, especially in the DLC, oh my god, I never realized how terrible and how many long combos so many DLC enemies had. I didn't realize that Gale was just taking from that. And then, like, it's just a boring fight because of how long it is too. It's just all of that combined makes Gale one of my least favorites. I'd probably put him below Nameless, actually. Yeah. Yeah. Soul Fender is probably my least favorite final boss in the series, or in the trilogy, just because, I don't know, like, the first phase is mostly fine. His spin and like charge with his longsword attack or longsword moveset is really annoying. His normal, it's like great sword moveset, I think it is really simple and actually really fun to fight. But as soon as he transitions into either of the other two, it sucks. Like the sorcerer having the what do you call it? The homing soul mass like status effect is so stupid. I hate that so much because it just goes over and over and over, and can hit you during other attacks, right? So which is just so annoying. And then when he becomes Gwyn, he has that really annoying like combo that he traps you in if you get hit by the first one, and then, you know, ends with the explosion. His lightning throw can be annoying to read, but it's not that bad, all things considered. Plus, it's a super easy fight. Like, at least Gwyn is difficult if you don't parry. Soul Fender is just easy. So, I don't like Soul Fender. I don't know. I'd probably put him above Deacons. Yeah, above Old King. So there's my tier list. Definitely probably some things you didn't expect. Or, you know, if you know me, it was like, oh, okay, obviously you did that. But, you know, some hot takes for sure. Like Burnt Ivory King is a lot of people's favorite boss in Dark Souls 2. Or like, I put a lot of Dark Souls 2 bosses a lot higher than most people would. Pursuer, you know, is really high. Smelter Demon is really high. But, or Bed of Chaos is probably a lot higher than most people would have expected, you know, near the top of B. But anyway, let me know your thoughts in the comments. How stupid I am for my opinions. Thanks for the engagement. I hope you enjoyed. I love you all, and I don't know how to end this.